we are organizing very many rich events, offline events every year. But we are very proud that we have a very modern our own base, our own online digital platform that lets us organize and hold very many rich online events. This is our platform. You can enter, you can see it, everything on our website. And our main leading light is technology obliges in all the regions, and I would like to underline our main goal: technology obliges for commercialization of the projects of our advocates, of our guests, of our partners. And we will be very glad if you join our chamber, and we will be going together to this leading goal. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to wish you today interesting conversation. No doubt it will be so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor, for your presentation about the chamber. Thank you very much, Effie, for your welcome note. My name is Michaela Meyer. I'm the Director of Finance Alliance, and I will be moderating this event. Welcome all. Today's webinar is about why is European funding so slow? And today we will try to lay out the basics of a public funding and grants in the European Union. Many European companies rely on funding provided by their countries or the EU as a whole to support their projects. Our keynote speaker and panelists will dig into how relevant public funding is nowadays and how companies can access it. So we'll ask us the question, why is European funding so slow? Our first speaker today is Rainer Bachmann, and after his presentation we will have a panel discussion with other experts. So let me introduce Rainer. Rainer Bachmann mastered in physics at the University RWTH Aachen. He became responsible for software-based process automatization in Krupp steel plants and later at Thyssen. Then he moved to the energy industry and became CIO in several major international companies and headed IT and innovation of Geminex. At this time, the largest German E plus P company and operating on a worldwide level. His next position was partner in the management and strategy consultancy of RWE Group, and then he led business development for e-mobility. Later, he returned as an exec board member to a management and strategy consultancy. Since 2017, he was heading the platforms and operations in the e-mobility business of E.ON, plus member of work groups about the digitalization of the energy transition at the federal government. Since February 2021, he returned as CEO to international management and strategy consultancy focusing on sustainability, energy management, digitalization of the energy transition, smart cities, grids, and mobility. And before I give the microphone to Rainer, I would like to remind you that you are now able to submit your questions through the chat function, which we will try to answer during our Q&A session a little bit later. Rainer, I will give you the moderator rights, so you will be able to share your screen.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, like Michaela told, I've been working in the utility energy industry since about 30 years almost. And so in the beginning of the first 20 years, it was not so much interest on the industry on our side on funding projects. But lately, when electromobility restarted, so to say, in Europe and in the world. So let's say 12, 13 years ago, it restarted somehow. And so also on the other side, also the volatile renewable energy sources were very much interesting. And then I realized personally that the electrical vehicles with the batteries and also with, let's say, fixed and stationary batteries that we expect might be helpful to support this the storage of renewable energies, which are volatile. Electricity has to be utilized whenever it is being produced, and the other way around. It has to be produced whenever it has been needed, and so there has to be synchronized. And to desynchronize it, storage has to be used. And this is the role of an electromobility. And it's also the efficiency of electromobiles is much better than combustion engines. In Germany, by the way, all the funded charging infrastructure has to be provided with green energy. It's not allowed to have gray or black energy in it. You get funding only with green energy, so there's a turnover into green energy, also especially for electromobility, And also we have this thing of sector coupling that we call to use renewable energies to provide, let's say, generate or produce heating and perhaps also energy for the industry. This will be the future with hydrogen, and also to produce or to generate energy to forward energy to the mobility, which is the electromobility partner. And so we are in Europe in the energy transition, which will have to be speed up now because of we want to get independent on fossil fuels, especially from the eastern part of Europe, like from Russia. And so renewable energies are more and more in the focus. And other forms of energy, there's one more, it's also renewable, but it's not volatile. And it will also be relevant in Europe. It's geothermy. You can use it whenever you want and produce either heating or current, also electricity. So this is the future, and this is what we are looking into, and this is what we need funding for. And it is on the European level, because all over Europe, or Central Europe, from Lithuania to Portugal and from the Netherlands to Greece, we have one synchronous area where all the transport system operators have to work together very close, and to make it happen and to use the expected renewable energies, there has to be much more arrangements, and we have to research on it. And the integrated European energy market is been on the way already since several times. We have grid codes which are relevant all over Europe. And so what we see is that that we have to research into it, because much more renewable energy and electricity will be used in the future. And we have to prepare our transmission system for this. And this has to be looked into, it has to be researched into, especially also, the integration of mobility and electricity and heating. And so we have been working on something like 10 or 12 European funding projects meanwhile. And so it's all about renewable energies and grids, how grids can let's say survive and to provide blackouts, to prevent blackouts. And so how they can be established, in what way the electromobility and the higher amount of energy can be transferred all over Europe to without having a problem with the transfer, and where the problems are typically blackouts of the electrical system, which is a bad thing. If you ever realized it, what happens when you have a blackout, then you don't get any news, you don't have a telephone, you don't have TV, you don't know what's happening, you don't have light, you have no whatever elevators, and so you have no idea what's happening outside. And this is a thing that has to be avoided anyway, of course. And so that's what we are working in. And for this purpose, the European Union is funding a lot, especially in the energy and in the digitalization. The alternative to digging the ground and putting more copper or aluminum into the ground to transfer the energy is intelligence. And this means digitalization, like applications who organize and manage the flow of energy and the generation of energy and the storage of energy. So this is why digitalization and the energy transition and then the heating transition as well is very relevant. And these things are being funded by the European Union. Until lately, it has been the Horizon 2020 project program, but meanwhile, it is the Horizon Europe program. And the funding is, what I recall, it's close to 100 billion euro. And so you can go for it, and everybody can go for it. And so, but typically it's always helpful to get support from a consultant who is focusing on this thing, how to approach and to apply for European funding. And there's one more funding project meanwhile, or funding program meanwhile, which is a global gateway. And the European Union is putting into the market something like 300 billion euro for the next 6 years, what I recall, especially for emerging countries, and to support the digitalization and to improve infrastructure in these countries, but also again based on European technology. And so it is also interesting to look into this. Of course, we have also been working with local, with national, like here in this case, German funding that is also relevant, but easier. And if you work, we have to work on the European level on this. No? We have to work with other European countries, and we have been doing research projects with a lot of on the EU level with a lot of European countries. It was always great to cooperate on the European level. No? Somehow it brings the countries together better. And so when we are applying again for EU funding at the moment, again in electromobility and energy management parts. No? So the background is, I find, very interesting and very relevant to have this EU funding. The application is not easy, and the control and the auditing you have to be aware of, no? That in the end there will be auditing to take a look into how the money has been spent on from your company. No? But in general, I really appreciate the funding from the European Union, and we have been doing a lot of very interesting things, which a company by itself, even a company like RWE or Ian, would not have done, because it's really research and expensive. And by that, it is really great that the European Union is funding these projects and approaches. No? Yeah, that is my perception on it, and thank you very much. And I would like to hand back to Michaela.
Thank you very much, Rainer, for your presentation. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you our next panelist, who is Bob Juchter van Bergen-Kwast. Bob is an international lawyer and a fellow of the Royal Statistical Society with extensive expertise in international law and finance, arbitration, and nobiliary law. He is regulated by the Chartered Institute of Legal Executive and has a certificate in English Common Law from the University of London. Law practice certificates were issued by the Netherlands Bar Associate and the Flemish Bar Council. Bob was an attorney at the bar of the Supreme Court of the Netherlands. He received his Master of Law degree from Erasmus University Rotterdam and certified in financial markets from Yale University. He served as a Springer Review for new computing paradigma, which are distributed, heterogeneous, and autonomous, yet meaningfully collaborative, and published the information model of the technical analysis for buying and selling stocks in Maastricht Research School of Economics of Technology and Organizations. Bob was honored as one of the 2018 New York State Bar Associates Empire State Council. He is also the CEO of the European Chamber of Digital Commerce and president of the Court of Arbitration. Bob received an honorary doctorate in Kiev for his outstanding contribution to business development. He is a dissident member of the Society of Friends of St. George, descendants of the Knights of the Garter, College of St. George, Windsor Castle. Bob, welcome. Would you like to add something and say hello?
Thank you so much, Michaela. It's quite interesting what Rainer is mentioning, the importance of European funding, and it becomes much more important since the war, the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. We want to be more independent of energy supplies from Russia. So it's very important that we develop our own independent in energy sources. So from the Swiss Chamber of Commerce, I'm the CEO of the Swiss Chamber of Commerce in the Netherlands, we have always, it's difficult, but we focus on connecting professional investors to entrepreneurs, but it's always difficult to attract funding for research. Now, actually, Rainer has given us the solution for that issue. You need government funding for the research, and in order to develop a product as an entrepreneur, you want to develop a good product, and that's possible because of the government funding from the European Union. When you have established this product and you're backed by the funding from the European Union or from the national governments, it becomes much easier to attract private investors, because they will see that your company is credible, and they will also understand that when you are backed by the European Union, for example, that gives you a lot of credibility and shows that you're actually a very serious company with a very interesting new innovation. So that's what I would like to add for now to regarding Rainer's very interesting keynote speech. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Bob. And again, welcome. As the next panelist, I would like to introduce you Daniel Żywica. Daniel is the founder of Leadmasters, a consulting company that provides C-level consultancy services across digital marketing and transformations, media, contract negotiations, and EU project funding. Daniel specializes in building up the market proposition and market offers, value boosting through innovative perspectives. Daniel has extensive executive experience as chairman and CEO, while he's responsible for media and creative agencies of WPP PLC Holding, with clients business and telco, banking, finance, and FMCG fields. Daniel, welcome. Would you like to add something?
Thank you, Michaela, for having me. Good morning, everyone. Again, yes, I mean, it's a broad topic a little bit, and each of the terms that I listened from my predecessors here in the discussion are really the huge topics which can take lots of hours to talk about. So maybe I would like to take the perspective from the little bit of what I do in the real life, while Leadmasters with our partners here in Czech Republic and Slovakia focus rather on smaller and mid-sized businesses and their reality on as the topic of the discussion is funding, on the topic of funding and how to make it better work for the level of the local countries. While we have, of course, the typical challenge is that there is different speed of evolution across the Europe and European countries. So obviously, if I take my homeland Slovakia, there are many more challenges piled within the even execution of such projects, or even with the application process, etc. So there is a huge amount on the local level. There is a huge amount of the challenges we need to tackle and not forget about. While I totally respect there is a priority and dramatic priority shift. If Rainer spoke about the energy, or Bob added up with the Putin's war, unfortunately, these are some real disruptive trends in the globally, and of course, the European Union needs to react as the whole unity and but I suggest here that within that change of the priorities and within that natural shift in the strategy, probably there can be somehow some part of the regions and the countries, the set of the countries, like I believe Slovakia and more Central European countries belong there, are not on that space of the not at that pace of the development regarding how to work and how to use in their own benefit the EU funding programs. So I think this is the whole challenge lays here in the closing the gap between that kind of the understanding what are the options, what are the possibilities, mainly for the smaller and mid-sized businesses, and then we need to make sure that somehow those businesses are really well assisted and supported by European Union structures. So if we mentioned already consultants level or their contribution in the process, in the funding, in the innovation, I think it's really important to see the consultants on the work ground here on the local country level, more to be as the mediator, servicing both sides, not only the receiver or potential receiver of the funding, but also European funding structure themselves. So I see that for the near future, we should take a better focus on how to use consultants and their knowledge and their practical skills and everything and experience what they have in favor also European structures, because what we see, I just name one trend for the start. What we see from the surveys when we spoke within every and each project that is started, an application, we do some kind of the small surveys with the relevant audience. What we see consistently around those surveys and data, and I think this overlaps really with the European Union data as well. If you cross it, then you see that there is no difference with the big research which is done by European Union regularly. Is that on the country level, and I'm speaking now really more about Slovakia as a less developed and less innovative country in the European Union. I think what they see is that there are many barriers created around how even to approach or understand the role and the benefits of the European funding and all the programs, which is a huge scale where you need to navigate through as well. And I think that it's really important to focus on that helping hand that the European structures can give on the country level to that layer of the economy. And there I see, like many small businesses or entrepreneurs here think that if they even receive funding, it was so complicated for them to work with that properly, or they even saw the risk that they will have to return some part of the funding, which could be really the disruption for the whole business. That's a huge risk, by the way, also in their own P&L. So this creates such a barrier that we need to take down that barrier itself, and I think it should be focused there on how we tackle the perception, how we tackle the navigation through the whole topic of the funding, and how we promote really also innovation within application and working with the funding themselves, regardless the category we speak about, energy or small innovation or media vendors in the country or non-governmental institutions, regardless that category. So let's discuss this further. That's from me some introductory word. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Danielle. And again, welcome. And last but not least, I would like to introduce you, Sophie Glaser-Deruel. Sophie is a dedicated, mission-driven and analytic expert writing public funding, but funds and grant proposals for collaborative EU projects. She has more than 13 years of proven experience in EU project cycle management, including international collaborative project development, tender and funding proposal writing, policy development and implementation. Sophie, welcome. Would you like to add something?
I think Raina, Bob, and Daniel kind of covered all of the ground. I have to say, I really agree with what Daniel is saying. Sorry, there's a little bit of a feedback loop. I think that the knowledge on local level is a very big barrier. Not only because it's not just this misunderstanding, but it's I mean, you brought up P&L sheets. It's not just this, it's the return on investment, because these are a huge time investment. It takes away from your, European funding. I would say if you can do it we do it with a minimum of 50 days, 50 working days, it's doable. If you do not have experience in this, you have to learn a lot in 50 days. I would say that lead time goes to 100, 150 days very easily. 80% of the time you will be writing emails, and that's if you're working on the collaborative projects. So it's very difficult, and the ROI is usually much better if you're going for national funding. So if you're going for, if you're an SME and you have the option to go for an innovative funding round from your national government or from your national body for innovation, it's much easier. You will likely spend only 1 month writing the proposal. The competition will all be your local competition, so you know who your rivals are, and this is much more attractive. Obviously, the return on investment is also lower, so you're looking at much smaller amounts, but that's really, let's say, it's not, oh, sorry. Mihaela, can you hear me? There is a problem? Only on Mihaela's? Okay. Sorry. So for me, it's a question that's very important, is how
we can hear you, Sophie. Maybe
okay.
We can again.
So that perception is very important, and that, I think, is what Daniel also said, is relying on the funding structures and the support structures around. There is help if you are looking for it, not just in terms of consultants, but there is a Horizon Europe help desk. There are FAQs, which frequently I use them. All you need to know about the frequently asked questions is you need to be precise about what you're asking, and everyone will be able to see the answer. So if you're trying to be strategic about it, it's kind of throw it out the window. If you want this information, you need to be open about it. And I think this is another area where there's a little bit of misunderstanding, is that the strategic plan is what dictates what they want in projects. It's very different from national funding. National funding is usually bring us something that can generate IP, which can generate value for our country, so that we take this novel intervention and we can export it. So, that France will be famous around the world because we've developed this new cutting edge piece of data science or medical technology. The EU works backwards. It has priorities. So you start with the legislative package, then the strategic plan, which I think is 4 years, and then you get the work program, and then under this you get the calls. So they already have a really precise idea of what they want. It does mean, as Raina and Bob both pointed out, that it's slower to move when there is a crisis. Now, the strategic plan for 2021-2024 does include a lot on energy and a lot on energy independence, but this is a long-term plan. So it's not been impacted by the energy crisis and the Russian war in Ukraine. what is there is kind of slow moving. It's a general move for energy independence. It's a general move away from fossil fuels. And these are based on more climate crisis rather than immediate crises. So, I mean, immediate crisis. The climate crisis is immediate, but less immediate than war. So the question here is, how do you respond to the call, which is a kind of stagnant single fixed point in time written in a context, whilst also answering the current affairs and the current context? And that's where consultants can be very helpful, where reaching out to the funder can be very helpful. And I would really encourage everyone to do both of those things. One is more expensive, but they're both very useful, especially if you have not experience in this. And this is also one of the reasons, I mean, the whole question of today is, why is EU funding so slow? Because it's political, because we are looking at top level decisions taken at EU level head of state that then trickles down to the funding. So that's all I have to say.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sophie. Welcome as well. And thank you very much, all of you, for the introduction. And now I would like to start the panel discussion. And I would like to start beginning by asking Raina. Raina, which EU research projects have you worked on? Can you describe it?
Sure, we have been working on 5. One was e-dish. It had to be, it was about grid stability, especially, and to be sure that energy provision can be forwarded. It was an e-dish program, and then we had another one, G4V. So it was to set up a charging grid for electromobility, for electromobiles and electric vehicles, and to make sure that a mass operation of electric vehicles can be done in the European grid. Because you see, the grids are not the same all over Europe. The transmission systems are the same, but the grids itself are very different. While in Germany, you have a typical grid access of 30 kilowatt. In other countries, you only have 3 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt. And so putting up chargers at home is not possible in each country. That means you have to put the chargers in the street, which is a problem, or which can be a problem for the low voltage grids. And so we have been looking into that as well. And so then we have been doing the green emotion. It was a project to take a look at how the mass operation of electromobility will be accepted in the European Union. And then again, a look into the Plan Grid EV was another project. It was about the planning of the distribution system, so the lower voltage levels for the mass operation of electromobility, especially, and integrating renewable energies. We have been doing this as well, one of my colleagues. And the last one I've been doing was the Maestro project. It was about sustainable mobility in general. And I've been working for E.ON at that time, and I've been managing the project. And it was about utilization of vehicle-to-grid technology. Like how can vehicle-to-grid means you are not only charging cars from the grid, but so also the possibility to use the batteries to inject power or energy into the grid. And this can be very helpful. One thing is when charging can be done when you have too much renewable energy in the grid, but injection, there's also a good potential on this, or good possibilities in this, because you can prevent problems in the local grid or in the low voltage grid, where there's injecting reactive power, for example, which is a problem, is that you have a phase shift between current and voltage, and then you lose energy, only heat up the low voltage grid, but you don't transfer energy anymore. And this can be reduced by injecting reactive power. And the other thing is, the more electronic or the power electronics you include into the low voltage grid, the more problems you have with different frequencies. The typical frequency in the European grid is 50 hertz, but then you get different frequencies, and you get what we call harmonics in the grid, which are a problem. And also here, again, with vehicle grid technology, you can take, with one group of chargers, you can take energy from the grid, and the other group injects energy, the same amount of energy into the grid with the right phase and with the right frequency. And this we have found it out. This immediately reduces there's a KPI, total harmonic distortion of the grid. So it was a very interesting part, and we will come to it later, but especially was very much appreciated very much the cooperation with the colleagues from Spain, Sweden, and Greece, and Germany. It was a, let's say, almost perfect cooperation, and everybody learned so much. We learned a lot, but everybody learned so much. It was really a great project. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you, Rainer. Sophie, would you like to describe, let's say, your projects that you are working, for example, now on? Because then I have another question which will be related to this. Sophie, would you like to describe, let's say, your?
Well, we're working on a lot of projects. So because we are a consultancy who works from consortium building to ideation, we have long lead times. So we have some projects due next January that we are already working on. In terms of what we have worked on, we have a focus on obviously pillar 2, so this is collaborative projects focusing on global challenges and European industrial leadership. We focus on digital industry, space, climate, energy, mobility, food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. And I have a focus on marine technologies and a lot of, let's say, blue and green projects. So we recently submitted a project on Mediterranean pollution, on marine protected areas, on one which you were involved in, on monitoring and control of fisheries. So we have a variety. We currently have some upcoming projects on railway. So something that Rainer said was this harmonization of different grid systems. This is very important in railways. We also have batteries and e-mobility, and how do we transition from fossil fuel economies to fully EV and e-mobility, and does this look like a traditional mobility economy where everyone has their own vehicle, or is this a sharing economy, or is this something completely new? So it's always interesting. So we work on everything and anything.
Amazing, thank you very much, Sophie. Why I was asking, because my next question is, what are typical funding amounts and frameworks conditions of the EU fundings? So, Sophie, would you like to continue, or Daniel?
Well, I would say that is hugely variable. So I have seen them go down to around 1 million. I have seen them go up to 38 million. We tend to work only on projects of 3 million and above, purely because when we're discussing collaborative projects, we want to make sure that every single partner is playing an actual role. And for 3 million and below, you're looking at maybe 3 companies, and one of them is going to be taking 1 million and the other 2 are going to be really picking up little bits. So it's hugely variable. It also depends if you're looking at a research and innovation action, which is kind of basic applied research. You're looking at projects between 36 and 48 months with TRL at the end of project of around 4 to 6, depending on the call. Innovation actions are further along, so these are close to market innovations. These have a higher TRL level, also based on the call scope, and can go into really high numbers. And then you have CSAs, which are coordination and support actions, which are essentially supporting existing EU policies, and these tend to be more around media and communications. So hugely variable.
Yeah, if I may add to Sophie, I would go even go down with those variable scale of the funding, which can be interesting. Also, going through the at least the region of smaller countries here in Central Europe. Recently, I worked on the application, which was around 300K, the max. And what I want to say by this, it's still interesting, and even more, it creates a better understanding that even smaller funding can be available. So that doesn't create that much barrier in the mindset of that company or that applicant. And I would even more, in terms of how to tackle this on the side of the European structures, I think that we need to draw the attention basically to the smaller project, because I think it creates, like if you take Pareto rule, 80-20, I mean, it's used everywhere, but here we can probably use it as well. So if we shift that into the layer of the economies where probably even smaller innovation adds up to the bigger innovation, and I think that you are still moving on to some exponential curve that applies to the innovation overall. Absolutely. So to me, it means basically that closing the gap that I spoke about in the beginning of the discussion. It's really, we need to be aware of closing the gap through the start of that exponential curve. So what I mean by that, if you take Germany, for example, as really the top economy and top innovating country, it's a tough competition for everyone else. Also, we could find the Netherlands and other above countries, of course, but from the perspective of the Central Europe, I think that your mindset works in the way that you need to tear down those barriers, not to thinking about that there are many more innovative competitors in the playground, and so how you tear down the barrier, it's really important. And I think that's about communication and focus of the European funding structures on the help and on the support, again, to the small businesses.
Can I add something to that, Michaela?
For sure.
So
Sure.
what I see is the incredible importance of funding consultants here. So as Daniel is mentioning, there are smaller amounts available as well. So it's not because these big firms, they have their internal consultants, they have their external very experienced high-profile consultancy firms. But these smaller innovative entrepreneurs coming from, for example, the universities and have developed something very, very interesting, they are highly dependent on government funding, as I mentioned. And actually the consultant, the local consultant is crucial in attracting this particular funding. And because the legal framework, for example, also the bureaucracy is so complicated that it's undoable. As Sophie mentioned, it takes you too much time. But apart from that, you will fail at the end. It's like going to a court of law without a lawyer. You will fail. It's doable, but you will fail. So I think that has to be, that can be stressed in this discussion, the importance of the funding consultants in order to obtain funding for your innovation as a smaller entrepreneur. It's not the issue that does not occur very much for the big firms. They know their ways, but the smaller firms, the smaller amounts, they can be crucial for actually creating a product from scratch. That particular gap, as Daniel mentioned, so that's what I would like to stress, the importance of the local consultants for innovation within Europe.
Amazing. Daniel, would you like to continue? I see you raised your hand.
Thank you. I used the button to raise the hand, so it works. Thank you. That's great. Exactly. I'm completely with Bob in this. And when I speak about put some part of the focus, regardless energy, climate change, digitization, transformation topics, overall, these are really important, of course. But in that, when you put the dotted lines to each category, there is a one central point, and that's to me that closing the gap through the who should be doing this on the local country level. I think it should be, again, smaller companies, consultancy companies, obviously with some experience and some profile, but not closed experience only with the European funding itself. So I see, as in my case, personal case, is that my background is more digital media, communications, etc., and business strategies overall. So I had to create some kind of the consortium when we were speaking about creating a reasonable application for one of our clients for the EU funding. So this is where I sought for the right referential profile of that experienced company directly in the EU funding, because I didn't have the reference for myself. So I think it's really important to somehow promote that idea that you need to operate through the networks. And I think, and I'm saying this on the European Tech Chamber, which is one of the, to me, in the last couple of months where I'm active in the chamber, one of the real and great exploration of the context and networking. And I think that this is something that also should European Union funding structures promote, the similar tools and how to create more contacts and explore the areas and experience of other companies in that area of funding. And what I have one, maybe it's in the ideal world, it will be simple idea how to tackle this at the moment. What if you imagine that instead of the governments, local governments, who have their own departments for that, the question is how talented and experienced people they can employ on the government level, on the local level. That's a huge question mark. So probably I imagine these are not the most experienced business people, for example, because it's not enough inspiration there or motivation, let's say. So if we keep it in the more private sphere, with that consultancy and help and support of the funding on the local level, if we create something what is basically, if you take tech giants from US or elsewhere, create how they sell their product, actually how they support their product, it's creating something that is called the network of the certified professional partners. So I think that certification could be helpful also on the local level. So, but not too closed for to make the entry into the funding easier, not as the exclusive club. So obviously European structures could be seeking for such certified partners to take them through the requirements and maybe some certification process, of course, that should be diligent and open to everyone on the other side. So that could be one of the, in the ideal world, that could be one of the really helpful initiatives that I promote.
Thank you very much, Daniel. What do you think, Raina, Sophie, Bob, about Daniel's idea? Let's say to create the partners, certified partners.
Yeah, that's the same impression. So at the big companies like E.ON, we have our own, let's say, departments who are looking into this, also preparing the auditing and all that. No? But meanwhile, we are a small, medium-sized enterprise, no? And that's why we are looking for support on consultant level. No? Yeah, this is quite typical. This is helpful. Also, we are working with Fraunhofer. They are also very much experienced on this level. No? However, reaching out is not always easy. But sometimes you get surprises. Yesterday in the Energy Mobility Alliance, one of the colleagues from Angola said they have been talking to the European Union last week about the global gateway, which is also very much interesting for us. No? So you have to check, you have to look around and try to find somebody. But having a consultant at your side, I think it's always a good recommendation. Yeah. Thank you.
I would second that. I mean, I'm a consultant myself, so I feel a little bit like I'm pointing to myself and saying, "Hi, here's my card." But the benefit of the consultancies is, as Daniel alluded to, it's not just being able to dig through the dense knowledge needed to write these calls in terms of auditing, administrative, all of these aspects. My consultancy, for example, is built between, we have change management consultants, digital change management consultants, business architects. My background is in policy, so we speak the same language as the EU, and I would say 90% of my job is translating what the EU says to business. And that's really my job as an interpreter. It's the EU will not understand when you talk about your profit and loss like this. What we need to talk about is how this impacts beyond finances. You know, it's great that you have 2,000 users in 2 years. What does that mean for example, in the medical sphere? What does that mean in terms of gains for healthcare? How, you know, if your product is working really well, what is the reduction in cost for national governments? What is the reduction in cost for EU health insurance cards or other? So it's making the valorization and that value proposition understandable, not only to business, but to the EU as well. So translation.
And I add something there, Sophie. It's on a private funding level. It's more or less the same. So entrepreneurs, what they do wrong when they deal with investors, and we coach them in that respect, is, for example, not having their financials up to date. They talk too much. You know, they're explaining instead of asking the questions. Now, for example, why is the investor interested in my company, for example, or what is the background of the investor? So they have to be prepared and to for a conversation with the investor, and that's more or less what you're saying now. It's a kind of translation, how to deal with the investor on a EU level, of course, then with the funding authorities. So I really recognize that it's very interesting that you focus it on that particular activity. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, I would even go further. Is part of my job is also translating from the different consortium partners, because when academia says something and an NGO says something and business says something, we're working on different books. You know, we are not using the same language to describe the same things. So the translation is every single facet, which is, again, the benefit of consultants is you're gonna have, I think Raina said it, they have internal audits, they have or internal auditors doing the audit section, they have experts in the subject matter doing the subject matter, they have Fraunhofer who they can rely on. Yeah, it's a marriage of all of these different capacities together, and that's the same thing in the consortium.
So I pick it up from here, Sophie. Absolutely agree, and I really love that overarching term, which is a translation. I completely agree, and I think it's it really comes from it's not like EU funding is really specific. I think also businesses themselves in the competitive area of the market sometimes do not translate right. So I think that's really the most important part of the consultancy job. I agree on that. Maybe a small or bigger elephant in the room could be what I experienced really explaining to my clients after application is that why we take a slice as the consultants from the funding, and it can be depending on the as the cost of the consultants can be somehow really fixed. So you cannot work with the percentage as the proportion. So sometimes in the smaller funding project, it can be really some substantial amount of that funding coming potentially to the consultant if the project is successful and if the consultant works on that with that company further. And I think again, in the ideal world, there is one idea. If we talk about the network of the certified consultants on the country level, not too exclusive club, but of course some kind of the requirements that I spoke about before. There is also a question to me if it's real to set up some kind of the funding for consultants themselves. So if you imagine that not anymore the burden would be on the funding itself, on the amount of the funds that recipient gets on that project, but also that it could be supported somehow from the European funding structure as a separate part for the supporting that certified consultant network, because that would help us to avoid and somehow eliminate that worries about if I can afford to pay those consultants, why those consultants are so expensive, etc., etc. So I think that could be part of that initiative if we coming back and taking one step back to how to democratize, how to popularize, and how to promote EU funding overall on the country level.
I'm sorry for my late reactions, but I have a delay in the connection. But Daniel, I agree with you, and I think it's a very interesting topic. And I would like to know Bob's experience, because Bob, you're working for the technology chamber. So I guess some of your members are asking you, okay, how can we get funding? What will you recommend them? Is it there, let's say the question, okay, now we are afraid that maybe the consultancy fees or the fees for the consultancy agency will be too high. What will you recommend them?
What I would recommend them is take the fees for granted, because it doesn't matter. The fees don't matter. The fees don't matter at all. It's the return on investment that matters. The return on investment. So if you are able to launch your product, and take that to develop that specific product and the company as a whole into a successful unicorn, it doesn't matter how much you pay for how much you pay for the consult. It's return on investment that matters. It's the return at the end of the success story that matters, and the consultancy fees will be nothing compared to the end result. So I would focus on the expenses of the consultants. It's irrelevant. On the other hand, what I do see is, for example, the retainer fee most of the funding consultants asks. and but that's not in the Netherlands. That's my experience. It's not much. It's not much the what entrepreneurs pay to funding consultants as a flat fee, and the final success fee. It's also reasonable. It's not that it's something dishonest or something. It's an honest fee for very important work. And I agree with Daniel, and when he says there could be some kind of certification. I think so. Yes, I think so. Yes. Also regarding transparency of these fees, because a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that it's return on investment that counts, and also, for example, they don't have a basis, some kind of what is usual in the business. They don't know that. So in order to compare a bit of the fees and make your own decision, it might be interesting to have a certification in place and which describes, well, this is recommended as an honest fee. We see this as an honest fee, and then the entrepreneur can make his own decision. It's like you can hire lawyers for 100 euros an hour, and you can hire lawyers for 1,000 euros an hour. But it's in the end, it's your own decision, and it's return on investment that counts. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Bob. And now I'd like to talk with you about consortium. This is what we talked about even before. And my question is, oh, Daniel, would you like to add something? I'm sorry. No. Okay. How do the partners come to an agreement about roles, responsibilities, and IP ownership? And I think this is still connected with our topic about fees. Sophie, would you maybe like to start? Then we can have a look how it works in Germany.
Well, our consultancy is quite network driven. So what we tend to do is, if we have a strong core consortium, which is usually 2 to 3 companies who are really driving the project, we fill in the gaps for them. So we kind of say, okay, this is really good, but you have nothing on research. So we can find you an NGO or a CSO or an academic partner to undertake the fundamental research aspects to back up what you are proving technology, and vice versa. If we have an academic institution leading, we can kind of say, okay, this is great, but how are you going to exploit this beyond just knowledge creation? You don't have anyone to really test it on the market. You have a prototype, but you're not market ready. We can find you a partner. So we tend to build those relationships, those networks that we have already. How do we come to agreement on IP? We involve lawyers. Easy answer is usually the correct one. Not all consortium members will be IP interested. Academia is renowned for wanting to secure IP, but not exploit it. So they are usually happy to earmark what IP is theirs and what IP is for the let's say, exploitation aspect with a private company, and also to IP license to each other. And this is good for them as well, because, you know, nearly every university I can think of has an accelerator portion that is trying to capitalize on the IP that is developed at academic level, but is never exploited, because the exploitation for academia is publish or perish. So again, it's the different priorities. Same thing with NGOs. We've worked with a lot of maritime NGOs. They come up with amazing content, but for them, it's a free content. There is no way for them to monetize it, and they don't really want to monetize it. So if they are coming up with an open and free system, we usually will find them a data partner or someone who can then extrapolate this and say, okay, so there's a free version for governments and for citizens. But all of this data shouldn't go to waste. If you want to manipulate this data for ocean modeling, for modeling how pollution is affecting different ecosystems, this is a for-profit section which can then be used by private companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers for their environmental impact assessment. So it's basically a data service for an existing service provider. So there are ways to kind of, even when there is no IP that wants to be exploited, there is a way to help the knowledge created from these projects to be used beyond the project. And this is actually a very important part of EU projects, is how do you have impact beyond your project? So yeah, again, consultants and lawyers are very good on this. Again, consultants and lawyers are very good on this.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sophie. Raina, would you like to share with us
Again, consultants
your
and lawyers are
experience?
very good on this.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sophie.
There was an echo. Can you please repeat your question, Michaela? Michaela, can you repeat your question, please?
I hope now without echo. Raina, my question was your experience within Germany. What is let's say, how do you come to an agreement with the consortium partners?
Yeah, in Germany it's a little bit easier, but you can only take into the consortium German companies. And if you want to utilize a European company, then you have to subcontract them. No? And to be frank, so most of the solutions that we have been developing is based on an international cooperation, like on the European level. No? So we're working with people from Switzerland as well, from Belgium and from Greece, whatever you mentioned. So so it's a little more complicated to do it in Germany. It is a little bit faster, but it is also lower on the budget, but also fine in general. And lately we applied for a project with something like 5 or 6. So it's up to 30 million euros you can apply for here. No? And typically go for the Ministry of Economies and Energy, or for the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. No? And so they have the applications are being checked by two of the budget controls, which is Projektträger Jülich, PTJ, or DLR, Deutsches Zentrum für Luft- und Raumfahrt. So the government has put companies or organizations in place which do a check and take a look at the applications. And typically the funding schemes are oversigned, so to say. So there are much more applications than funding available. So it's not easy to get a funding here in Germany in the end. No? Also, like I said, we are working with Fraunhofer on some very interesting cooperation partners. No? Yeah, that's the situation in Germany. It's faster, but it's less money, and it's a little bit let's say, probability of having success is a little bit lower than on the European level. That's my perception. No? Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Raina. Daniel, what about Eastern Europe or Central Europe, let's say?
Thank you. Well, I think it's a bit different, and what I'm promoting here locally, specifically for Slovakia, which is smaller than Czech Republic and much smaller than Poland, for example. But you have some basis for where I see it's a lots of opportunities somewhere in between. If you take, like you mentioned, E.ON in the energy as the leader, also in innovation, and then startups on the other side of the spectrum, there is a mass and a huge amount of the opportunities where you just with the small sparkle of or ignition of the innovation mindset, you can create something which was not typically like I'm speaking about well-established well-established companies on the local market level who have a sufficient robust basis for making out of that basis any innovation. Like I've speak last of my projects, and the application was around a media company where they have like many tools on the digital, many tools on the content side. So I was basically helping them, advising them how to make the innovative product from what they already have. And they didn't think about that that they can somehow build up that new innovation and present it in the way and in that language that was needed for the application. So that's one of the examples where I just understood as a consultant here that it's also our role and our responsibility. We need to stay motivated in there. So seeking out the operations and businesses and small businesses, mid-sized businesses that can be well established and that they can offer much of the opportunities for both themselves and EU funding support through the innovation transformation areas. Like when you look on the horizon, I mean, in Slovakia or in smaller countries, let's say Central Eastern Europe, I think it's a bit threatening in terms of when you look on the topics and on the programs, how they are articulated from the beginning. I mean, if you look from the perspective of the local entrepreneur, you will just understand that it's not for you, because words like Industry 4.0 and digital transformation, climate change and energy topics, all of those big priorities, if they are just too much visible in that wording of the programs, it can be somehow threatening for the smaller businesses, and for sure it's somehow threatening for this region. If I speak about Central Europe, because that the competition is huge and potentially huge from the Western or all the countries in Europe.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Yeah, I have one question that's related to that. You told me that, or you told us that it may be frightening for smaller companies. So my question is, what does the EU expect from the research projects? So that, let's say, the expectations. That could be frightening. But I know you have lots of experiences in research projects.
Yeah, yeah. Somehow I feel that it is also trying to get the countries together, no? Because the cooperation between the last project between Spain, Sweden, Greece, and Germany is really great, no? And it's an experience which I had in all the EU-funded projects, no? So the cooperation is great, and you feel more like a European than like a German. And meanwhile, no? When you are working with the colleagues, no? I think that is one of the ideas that is behind this the funding, and the other one, of course, is to develop a technology on the European level, sure, no? To be able to forward and perhaps to stay ahead, or at least to be not to lose contact to the other countries and to their technologies and to their state of innovation. No? So the innovation is in Europe is important, like the colleagues said, no? And I feel that we are doing a good job. And meanwhile, we are allowed to present, and we are presenting the results all over the world now, also to other areas like China, and that, but let's say only with a sustainable, no? Not to bring them into a competition position, but to tell them what can be done on the technological part, or let's say also on the electricity and energy markets, what can be done there. No? So I really appreciate the European funding and the cooperation with the colleagues from the other European countries. No, it's just great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to add something to this question? Otherwise, we will answer the questions
Maybe,
from
Michaela, if I may add,
Sure.
that there's, if I hope this doesn't sound as a criticism. I think that we keep the constructive tonality for all the time of the call, but there is one like from the practical level here in Slovakia. What we see in the surveys is basically even those entrepreneurs or businesses who receive the funding, they do not plan to receive another funding from another project. So they want to be rather off the area of the funding because it was too much of the burden for them in terms of the procedures, auditing, consultants, etc., etc. Many reasons. Already they did in Slovakia specifically is that they shifted the funding itself into financial tools category. And once it is in the financial tools category, it looks like it's really, giving the loans through the banking structures, through the commercial banks here in the country, which I see it's really somehow streamlining the process, making the funds more available. But there is a condition if the commercial banks, if this is a priority for them really, or how to make this it's better and higher priority for them in that reality that they have their own business and core business and other strategies probably. So it's also about defining the role of the banks here in the procedure, but I think it's a great example of how to somehow streamline and make it more available to the smaller and mid-sized businesses overall.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Danielle. Sophie, I can see that you raised your hand as well.
Yeah, so I will caveat this by saying my experience is very much on Pillar 2, so global challenges and industrial leadership. But in terms of what does the EU expect from companies? Firstly, get a consultant because it will be different by call, but specific issues which are very important here are gender equality, inclusiveness, inclusion of social science and the humanities, ethics and integrity reviews, open science, open innovation, industrial leadership, strategic value chains, global markets, global challenges, and then on the dissemination and exploitation, education, training, upskilling industries. Daniel said Industry 4.0, but that's quite literally one of the goals here is to get people to get digital skills to make Europe not just an industrial power, but a digital industrial power. Market uptake, deployment, policy change, standard change, all of these things. So again, get a consultant. They'll be able to tell you what you need to focus on for the specific call. But there is a whole amount, there's a whole world of policies around each different call. Ren talked earlier about having like for like in e-mobility, that you have similar charging points, and these kinds of standardizations are really important. Maybe you saw, I think it was yesterday, but the EU is going to bring in harmonized phone charging. So not only your phone, but your MP3 player, all of your digital devices will have the same charging cable. This has been 10 years in the making, but this is exactly the kind of standardization or pre-standardization work they are looking for.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sophie. And before, well, yeah.
So it actually shows, Sophie, I kind of realize now that it's important to have a consultant, to require the help of a consultant and at a very early stage, because when you have developed the whole product, when there are possibilities of changing the product or changing the emphasis of what you're researching about the innovation, that the consultant might say, well, if you stress more those particular advantages, funding will become more easy. So that's what I'm realizing now. Thank you. It's quite interesting. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And let us now answer. We have here, before we start with final statements, one question, the public chat from Bent. Will EU fund oil and gas IoT industry as EU use gas to generate electricity? I think maybe Rainer, some more or less question for you.
I don't think so. Gas will be in an interim technology before we change over to hydrogen. We've been looking to hydrogen very much, and we know that the gas pipelines that are available in Europe and the storages are completely sufficient to transport and distribute and store hydrogen as well. No? So natural gas will only be an interim technology. And oil I don't see in the future. Coal definitely not. Also, unfortunately, we have lignite-fired power plants in Germany still. No? But don't tell it anybody. No? It is a disaster. No? And so I don't think it will be funded. Same applies to nuclear power plants. Setting up new nuclear power plants is not sustainable, but taking them off the grid now, no, while they are still operating and producing energy, is also not reasonable. No? So they should stay, they should be connected to the grid as long as they are able to inject energy, and only then they could be shut down, not now while they are still under operation. That is not reasonable. They don't get more safe or secure when you take them off the grid. It's the same situation. No? So it's a little bit, and we have been talking about energy. There are new technologies coming, but not there will be too late for to the climate neutrality. No? I don't think that oil and gas will be funded in the future, except that gas, when we talk about hydrogen gas, now, that definitely is being funded a lot meanwhile. Okay, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Rainer. And now I would like to ask you to make a final statement or recommendation for our audience to close the panel discussion. So 30 seconds, please. Sophie, ladies first.
It's a lot of pressure. So I think that the main takeaways is, I mean, for me, it's this education piece. It's that the EU is still opaque. It has tried to simplify the system from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe, but there is still a lot of lack of knowledge, or the knowledge is just too dense. So rely on national contact persons, rely on your different consultants, whether that is existing consultants that you had for seed funding who can help prep you for EU funding, whether that is your legal counsel, whether that is funding consultants. Rely on the varieties of knowledge around you, and don't leave it till 1 month before the deadline. As I would also say, look in the annual work programs. These are usually published in December, January for the coming year. Don't go for any that are less than 6 months away, so that you have adequate time for planning, and reach out. Daniel, myself, various other consultants are available, and there is a lot of knowledge that we can share.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sophie. Rainer, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I would recommend go for European funding, EU funding, because then you operate, you work with European countries, with countries from the European Union. And personally, I feel that the European Union is somehow I don't want to be immodest, but the best place in the world somehow. No? And so go and work with the European Union countries. Now, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Rainer. Bob?
What I would recommend is for entrepreneurs who have made a great discovery and who need money for further researching their innovation and bringing that, transforming that innovation into a working product. First, hire the funding consultant before you actually go to private funding. So the combination of the government funding and the and private funding is very, very interesting for entrepreneurs who have made a discovery and want to do some further research in order to get the product on the market. Thank you very much, Michaela.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Bob. And last but not least, Daniel, very short, please. Your summary.
Yeah, really short. You know, these are not the recommendations, maybe my personal takeaways. So thank you for discussion, really. It was also so inspiring for me because when we speak about the role of the consultants, I see that there is much work to do also on the country level in terms of the activation of consultancy business around the funding. I think that's number one. Number two is for the businesses, and both for businesses and consultants, really build your networks. Look abroad if you are in a smaller country. Try to make the best connections, and I think the value will come through that connections, and you will be surprised how much you can build up in terms of the proposition and innovation itself, connecting all of the dots in the network. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And before we go, let me hand over the microphone to Jörg Tuchen, my colleague, CEO of Go Blue Now. I'm sorry, Jörg, that we took more time, but please, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. I will be very, very brief because my next call is waiting. Thank you very much to all of you here in the call, contributing, participating, sharing your insights, sharing your knowledge. As always, that's highly appreciated. After the call, I will send each of you a tree certificate, which EUTech does for all of the more than 200 webinars per year as a little gesture of our appreciation. Some of you, as I know, so for example, Rainer, are collecting these tree certificates. They probably can hang them over his bed already. Highly appreciated. Hope to see you again in future webinars. Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much, Sophie, for being here as an advocate of EUTech, and hope to have that you all have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jörg. And it's been really a pleasure having you, Rainer, Bob, Daniel, and Sophie in our webinar. And also, I would like to thank the audience for attending today's webinar. And I hope to see you again soon, hopefully next week during our follow-up networking group. I will send you an invitation. And as we always say, technology obliges. Have a wonderful day and see you soon again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.